Facebook has a huge subculture of free and home birth groups where honest medical advice such as go see a doctor or ask a doctor is frowned upon, banned. You can be removed from the group for even suggesting somebody go see a real doctor. And I think among the many things that Facebook needs to crack down on, these groups are very dangerous and high on the list of priority when it comes to removal or cracking down on. This first story I'm going to share comes from Free Birth / Unassisted Childbirth. It's a group on Facebook, and I am going to give you a content warning. This is about a child loss. Also mentions COVID, and it's a really sad story. So, prepare yourself, and if you're not comfortable with child loss and stuff like that, then I would tap out. Additionally, this is a long story, so there's probably going to be 2 or 3 parts. I'm going to just give a rundown of the story. You can tap the screen to pause and actually read the screenshots because it's a lot. So I'm going to try to give a truncated version. The parent posting here posted that she went into labor at 35 weeks. She had experienced some bad leg aches a couple nights before she went into labor, and it kept her from sleeping very well. After 7 hours, she gave birth to her son at home. He was perfect, and the birth was perfect until it wasn't. She waited 4 hours to seclude herself in the bathroom to try to get her placenta out. There's a lot to be said about this waiting 4 hours to deliver the placenta. This is really dangerous. I don't have a lot of time in this video to go over why it's dangerous, but suffice to say 30 minutes is usually tops before interventions are needed to remove the placenta from the uterus. She goes on to say that she checked for the placenta and felt an arm. She had her husband call EMS. They told her to try to not push, but her body pushed out the baby anyway. The baby came out gray, covered in furnics. She tried the best she could, but the baby was dead. This is horrifying, a horrifying thing to give birth to a child, not know that you are pregnant with a second child, and then give birth to it unexpectedly. That's horrifying. If she had had medical interventions or even prenatal checkups, she would have known that she was pregnant with twins and could have planned accordingly. She was taken to the hospital and pronounced dead. They also admitted the son because he tested positive for COVID. He was admitted to the NICU. She also tested positive for COVID the next morning. I'm going to be running out of time here, so I'm going to just cut it off here and go on to the next video. Welcome to part 2 of this tragic home birth story from Facebook via Reddit. Just to recap the last video, this mother labored for 7 hours, gave birth to her son at home, waited 4 hours to try to deliver her placenta, which is really, really bad. Went into the bathroom to do that and realized that she was actually having a second child that she was unaware of. Content warning for child loss. That child was born deceased. The mother says, looking back, I have so many questions. Why didn't I know I was pregnant with twins? You didn't know you were pregnant with twins because I had chosen not to get an ultrasound, as I knew where the placenta was, and that was all I was concerned with about for my vaginal birth after cesarean. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about FBHCs. I had both of my children vaginally. I have never had to have a C-section, so I really don't know about the complications that are involved in FBHCs, especially in terms of home birthing. I'm just not even going to comment on that. What I am going to comment on is you didn't know you had twins because you didn't have any prenatal care. You didn't have an ultrasound. Why would you know you were having twins? I don't mean to sound like I'm blaming this mother for this child's death, but really I'm blaming the mother for the child's death. I'm sorry. She goes to say that she didn't have any physical indication of twins. That's completely fair. Her morning sickness was mild. Her weight gain was exactly the same. She wants to know if her leg pains had anything to do with having COVID. Did COVID kill my girl? I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that this family are anti-vaxxers who pretty much don't believe anything about the dangerous nature of COVID, especially when it comes to COVID and pregnancies, especially when it comes to how COVID can affect things like the placenta. There are so many stories about COVID placenta that are just horrifying. I'm going to go on to guess that this mother either wasn't aware she had COVID or just didn't care. And that's a whole other thing. That's like a whole other video that I'm not even probably going to get into because I'm not going to be nice about it. But no, COVID probably didn't kill your daughter. Then she goes on this weird kind of rant, and I'm not going to really judge her on this because I'm not going to judge grieving parents too much, but about how her son like psychically knew that she was having a girl and a boy. It's very bizarre. And actually, I just read an update comment from this parent, and there's a lot of parentification of this son that, again, I'm not really going to talk about too much, but it's very squicky. I'm going to go to a part 3. This is part 3 of this story from Facebook via Reddit about a mother who home birthed her child not knowing that she was actually pregnant with twins, and her second child was, content warning, born deceased. Just to recap, after they went to the hospital and pronounced the baby dead, the other baby was admitted to the NICU for COVID. The mother was also tested positive for COVID that she didn't know she had. This mother did not have any sort of prenatal intervention. She didn't have any ultrasounds, anything like that, so she wasn't aware that she was pregnant with twins. She was also attempting a vaginal birth after cesarean at home. I'm not, as I said in the last video, I'm not an expert on VBACs, so I don't know if that's frowned upon or not in general. I know it's possible to have a successful VBAC. I just don't really know anything about it. This post ends with some really bizarre, my other son was psychically aware that I was pregnant with twins, and I'm not knocking psychically aware children or anything like that because I actually do believe in that sort of thing, but I just think it's an odd sort of parentification of this child. And she goes on later in another comment that I'm not including to say that her son has said that this daughter is going to be born again as a living baby, and it's all very strange, but I don't want to judge too harshly on this grieving parent as much as I'm already judging, because I do believe that she's responsible for this child's death in several different ways. And I know that's really, really harsh to say. I know it's harsh to say, but you know what? Sometimes personal responsibility is a thing, regardless of how horrible the consequences are. In fact, I think personal responsibility should be something that is more showcased when the consequences are terrible. I have 2 beautiful boys, but my heart aches to have my little girl. Here's where this mother went wrong. 1, no medical interventions, no prenatal care. Prenatal care is essential. There are so many free birth and home birth parents who think like ultrasounds ruin their baby's eardrums, stuff like that. It's super bizarre, not founded in any sort of reality. 2, waiting 4 hours to deliver her own placenta. 4 hours is an insane amount of time to wait. 3, not being aware that she had COVID somehow. I hate to admit this, but I think that this child loss could have been prevented with proper prenatal care and having a baby in a medical facility with trained professionals. She would have at least been aware that there was a second child. This is just one of many tragic home birth stories. And unfortunately, it's not the first and it's not the last.